The shotgun blast shattered the morning stillness as Evangeline Hartwell dove behind the overturned wagon, her wedding dress torn and stained with desert dust. 3 masked men circled her like vultures, their horses snorting and pawing at the blood-soaked earth where her driver lay motionless. "Pretty little thing, ain't she?" One of the bandits sneered, dismounting with deliberate slowness. "Shame to mess up that fancy dress before we have our fun." Evangeline's fingers closed around a sharp piece of broken wheel spoke, her heart hammering against her ribcage. This morning she had been primping for her wedding to Judge Cornelius Whitmore, the most powerful man in Copper Creek territory. Now, 3 miles from town, she faced a fate worse than death at the hands of desperate men who preyed on travelers. "Come out, sweetheart," another bandit called, his voice thick with menace. "Make this easy on yourself." She pressed her back against the wagon's splintered wood, remembering another time when death had stalked her 5 years ago, when Comanche raiders had attacked her. Amy's homestead. She'd been 17 then, cornered in the root cellar while her parents' screams echoed above. That night, when all seemed lost, salvation had come in the form of a young Apache warrior with eyes like winter storms. The memory gave her strength. Kestrel, that's what she'd called him, though she'd never learned his true name. He had appeared like smoke in the darkness, silent and deadly, cutting down 3 Comanche before they knew death had found them. When she'd stumbled from her hiding place, terrified and grateful, he'd looked at her with an intensity that burned itself into her soul. "I got movement behind the wagon." Third bandit raised his rifle. Evangeline closed her eyes, gripping her makeshift weapon. Judge Whitmore had promised her security, respectability, a life of comfort in exchange for marriage to his 60-year-old frame. But security meant nothing if she died here in the dust, her blood feeding the hungry earth. A sound like wind through canyon walls whispered across the desert. The bandit with the rifle suddenly pitched forward, and arrows sprouting from his back like a deadly flower. His companions spun in confusion as shadows seemed to dance at the edges of their vision. "What the hell?" The second man's words died in his throat as a figure materialized from the heat shimmer tall, moving with predatory grace. Evangeline's breath caught. Even after 5 years, she recognized that fluid motion, the way he held himself like coiled lightning ready to strike. The remaining bandits opened fire. They might as well have been shooting at ghosts. The Apache warrior flowed between their bullets like water, his knife finding its mark with surgical precision. In moments that felt like heartbeats, the threat was ended. Evangeline rose slowly from her hiding place, her wedding dress a mockery of white innocence against the carnage. The warrior stood 30 feet away, his dark hair longer now, streaked with copper in the desert sun. Those storm-gray eyes found hers across the space between them, and 5 years collapsed into nothing. "Kestrel," she whispered. He stepped closer, and she saw the change's broader shoulders, new scars, a hardness in his features that spoke of battles fought and won. But when he spoke, his voice carried the same quiet strength that had once promised her safety. "You remembered? Your name isn't really Kestrel," Evangeline said, her voice steadier than she felt. The bodies of the bandits lay sprawled in the dust, but she barely spared them a glance. All her attention focused on the man who had once again saved her life. "Nahali," he said simply. "It means forest. My mother named me for the place where I was born." He moved with careful grace, checking each body with professional thoroughness. "You were to be married today?" It wasn't a question. His eyes took in her elaborate dress, now ruined beyond repair, the pearl combs scattered from her hair during the attack. She touched her throat self-consciously. Feeling naked without the heavy necklace, Judge Whitmore had insisted she wear his grandmother's diamonds. A symbol of ownership as much as affection. "The ceremony is in 2 hours," she admitted. "They'll come looking when I don't arrive." Good Nahali retrieved his arrows, cleaning them with efficient movements. The judge's men ride in formation, heavy horses, easy to track. "They will not find sign of what happened here." The way he said it made her study his face more carefully. There was something deliberate in his words, a planning that went beyond chance encounter. "You knew. About the wedding, about my route." Da. He straightened, those storm-gray eyes meeting hers without flinching. I have watched over you for 5 years, Evangeline Hartwell, from shadows, from distance. Today I could not stay away. The admission hit her like a physical blow. 5 years of wondering, of dreaming about the mysterious warrior who had vanished. At dawn, without explanation. 5 years of settling for Judge Whitmore's practical proposal because no other man had ever made her feel the way Nahali had in those few stolen hours after he'd saved her. You've been watching me? Her voice cracked despite her efforts to remain composed. Your father sold his land to mining interests 6 months after the raid. Moved to town, took work at the general store. Nahali began gathering stones, building what she realized would be a cairn over the driver's body. Whitmore noticed you 2 years ago. Is not a good man. He's respected, powerful. He owns half the territorial government, and the other half fears him. Nahali's voice remained calm, but she caught the steel beneath it. His first wife died under mysterious circumstances. His second disappeared. Entirely, you would have been his third. The words sent ice through her veins. She'd heard whispers, of course, but Judge Whitmore commanded such authority that few dared speak openly against him. Why didn't you come to me before? Let me agree to marry him. Nahali paused in his work, a heavy stone balanced in his hands. For the first time since his arrival, uncertainty flickered across his features. Because you deserve more than a half-breed warrior with a price on his head. Because I am Apache, and you are white, and the world has no place for what might grow between us. But you came today. Today I could not let you walk into that man's cage. He set the stone with careful precision, then turned to face her fully. My people have a saying, the heart knows its own path, even when the mind counsels otherwise. I have counseled otherwise for 5 years. Today my heart won. Evangeline stared at him. This man who had haunted her dreams, who had shaped every choice she'd made since that terrible night when he'd appeared like an answer to prayer. Judge Whitmore had offered security, respectability, a place in civilized society. But standing here in the desert dust, her wedding dress torn and bloody, she realized civilization might not be worth the price. They'll hunt you, she said quietly. When they find the bodies, when I don't return, they'll know someone took me. Let them hunt. Nahali moved toward his horse, a paint mare who watched him with obvious devotion. I know this land better than they know their own names. The question is not whether they will catch me. The question is what you choose. He swung into the saddle with fluid grace, then extended his hand toward her. I can take you back to town, to your wedding, to the life you've planned. Or you can come with me into the unknown. Evangeline stared at his outstretched hand, her entire future balanced on the edge of a knife. Behind her lay Copper Creek, Judge Whitmore, respectability and safety. Before her stretched the vast unknown of the desert, with a man whose very existence challenged everything her world believed about civilization and savagery. If I go back, she said slowly, what story do I tell? That your driver tried to assault you, that you fought, that he fell and struck his head. Nahali's voice remained steady, but she caught the tightness around his eyes. That you walked back to town in shock, that the bandits found his body? After you fled, no one will question the word of Judge Whitmore's bride. The careful planning in his words told her he'd thought this through, prepared for her refusal. The realization twisted something painful in her chest. He'd come to save her, knowing she might still choose her gilded cage. And if I go with you, then you become an outlaw. My people will not fully accept a white woman, no matter how I stand for you. Your people will consider you dead or worse. We will have only what we can carry, what we can find, what we can fight for. Evangeline looked down at her ruined wedding dress, at the pearls scattered in the dust like fallen stars. She thought of Judge Whitmore's soft hands, his calculating eyes, the way he'd spoken of her as if she were property to be acquired. Then she looked at Nahali, at the scars that marked his body like a map of survival, at eyes that had seen her truly from the first moment. 5 years ago you saved my life, she said. Today you saved it again. How many more times will you have to rescue me from the consequences of trying to live as others expect? Something flickered in his expression, surprise, hope carefully restrained. The path I offer has its own dangers. Yes, but they're honest. Dangers. Not the slow poison of pretending to be someone I'm not. She reached for his hand, felt the calloused strength of his fingers close around hers. Teach me to survive in your world, Nahali. Teach me to be strong enough that you never have to save me again. He pulled her up behind him in one smooth motion, her torn skirt settling around the horse's flanks. The paint mare snorted and pranced, eager to run. Evangeline wrapped her arms around Nahali's waist, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady rhythm of his breathing. Hold tight, he murmured, and the horse exploded into motion. They rode hard across the desert floor, weaving between red rock formations that jutted from the earth like ancient monuments. Evangeline had never ridden this fast, this free, the wind tearing at her hair and whipping her dress like a banner of rebellion. Behind them, dust clouds marked their passage, but ahead lay only clean horizon and possibility. As they climbed into the foothills, Nahali slowed the mare to a walk. The silence between them felt heavy with unspoken words, weighted with the magnitude of what she'd chosen. Finally, he spoke without turning. There is something you must understand. Among my people, I am called Nahali who walks between. I am neither fully Apache nor fully accepted by the white world. My father was a cavalry scout, my mother a medicine woman. Both peoples see me as other. Is that why you stayed away? Partly, his shoulders tensed beneath her arms. Also because 5 years ago, when I looked at you in that root cellar, I knew you could be my weakness. A warrior cannot afford weakness. And now, he guided the horse around a stand of prickly pear, buying time before answering. Now I think perhaps a warrior cannot afford to live without heart. You have been my heart, Evangeline, even from distance. Better to face the world with you at my side than spend another day pretending I could forget you. The admission sent warmth flooding through her, chasing away the last of her doubts. She tightened her arms around him, pressing her cheek against the strong line of his back. Where are we going? To see if you have the strength for what you've chosen, he said. There is a place, hidden in the mountains, where others like us have gathered. People who belong neither here nor there, who make their own way. Others like us? Half-breeds, outcasts, those who choose love over law? His voice carried a note of grim humor. We call ourselves the Lost Ones, though perhaps we are the only truly found. The hidden canyon revealed itself like a secret whispered. In stone, Nahali guided his horse through a narrow cleft in the rock face that seemed impassable until the last moment, when it opened into a green sanctuary carved from the heart of the mountains. Water cascaded down red walls and silver ribbons, feeding a stream that wound between cottonwoods and wild grass. Evangeline gasped at the beauty of it, but her wonder deepened when she saw the people. Perhaps 30 souls moved about the canyon. Floorsome tending gardens, others working leather or metal, children playing in the stream. What struck her most was their diversity. Apache mingled with Mexican. White settlers worked alongside freed slaves, and she spotted at least 3 other couples where love had crossed racial lines. Welcome to Refugio de los Perdidos, Nahali said softly. Refuge of the lost. An older woman approached them, her gray hair braided with turquoise beads, her face bearing the weathered beauty of someone who'd lived fully. She was clearly mixed blood, Apache and Mexican perhaps, with eyes that missed nothing. Nahali, she said warmly, then studied Evangeline with frank curiosity. So this is the woman who has haunted your dreams? Evangeline flushed, suddenly aware of her torn wedding dress, her disheveled appearance. But the woman's smile held no judgment, only welcome tinged with knowing amusement. I am Esperanza, she continued. I lead this place alongside my husband, though lead is perhaps too strong a word. We simply try to keep everyone from killing each other during the full moon. Her laugh was rich and infectious. Come, child. You look like you need food, clean clothes, and answers to questions you haven't yet learned to ask. Over the next hours, Evangeline discovered the remarkable community Nahali had brought her to. Esperanza's husband turned out to be a former cavalry officer named James Morrison, who'd been court-martialed for refusing to participate in a massacre. Their love story had begun in chained she a prisoner. He her gardened, bloomed despite laws and prejudices that declared their union impossible. The world has no place for people like us. Esperanza explained, as she helped Evangeline out of her ruined dress and into simpler closed buckskin leggings and a woven shirt that felt like freedom after years of corsets. So we make our own place. How do you survive? What do you eat? How do you trade? We are very good at things civilized folk prefer not to think about. James Morrison answered from the doorway, his weather-beaten face creased with humor. We know the mountain passes, the water sources, the hidden valleys. We guide travelers who don't ask too many questions, trade with those who value discretion, and occasionally liberate supplies from those who have too much. You're outlaws. By law, yes. By conscience, no. Esperanza's voice carried quiet conviction. We harm no innocents, steal only from those who've grown rich on others' suffering, and protect those who need protecting. Yesterday, for instance, Nahali prevented a great injustice. Evangeline looked toward where Nahali stood, speaking with several men near the corral. He told you about the wedding? We've been watching Judge Whitmore for months, James said grimly. His business interests include a particularly nasty form of indentured servitude. Young women who sign contracts they can't read, only to find themselves trapped in brothels, or worse. Your marriage would have legitimized his operations, given him social cover he badly needed. Words hit her like cold water. She'd known Whitmore was ruthless in business, but this painted a picture of systematic evil that made her stomach turn. I had no idea. Of course not. Men like Whitmore are very good at presenting respectable faces. Esperanza's eyes softened with sympathy. But you would have learned eventually, and by then, it would have been too late. As evening approached, the canyon came alive with music and storytelling around a central fire. Evangeline found herself sitting beside Nahali on a blanket woven in patterns that seemed to shift in the firelight, listening to tales of love found against impossible odds, of families forged not by blood, but by choice. How long have you known about this place? She asked, during a quiet moment. 3 years. I was badly wounded after a skirmish with Bounty. Hunters, James found me, brought me here to heal. Holly's hand found hers in the darkness. I never stayed long. Always rode out again, telling myself I had work to do, people to protect. What changed? His fingers tightened around hers. I realized the person I most wanted to protect was choosing to marry a monster rather than wait for a half-breed with nothing to offer. I decided that maybe nothing was better than something evil. You're not nothing, Evangeline said fiercely. You're everything I've ever wanted and was too afraid to reach for. And now, are you still afraid? She looked around at the faces illuminated by firelight, people who'd chosen love over law, hope over safety, truth over convention. For the first time in 5 years, she felt like she might actually belong somewhere. Terrified, she admitted. But not of you, not of this. I'm afraid I'll wake up and find it was all a dream. That I'm still standing in that church in my white dress, promising to honor and obey a man who sees me as property. Nahali lifted their joined hands, pressed his lips to her knuckles. This is no dream. And tomorrow, if you're willing, we begin to build something real. Dawn came soft and golden to the hidden canyon, painting the red rocks in shades of honey and rose. Evangeline woke to find herself alone in the small shelter Esperanza had provided, the events of the previous day flooding back with crystalline clarity. Through the open doorway, she could see the community beginning its daily rhythm, children fetching water, women tending cooking fires, men checking weapons and supplies. She dressed quickly in her borrowed clothes, braided her hair simply, and emerged to find Nahali, waiting with a cup of coffee and something that might charitably be called breakfast. Sleep well? He asked, though his eyes searched her face as if looking for signs of regret. Better than I have in months, she admitted, accepting the strong, bitter coffee gratefully. I kept expecting to hear church bells. A shadow crossed his features. They will have found the bodies by now. The search will have begun. Will they find this place? Not easily. But we cannot assume they won't try. He gestured toward the canyon's mouth, barely visible through the screening. Trees. James's scouts posted, and we have ways of discouraging unwanted visitors. Still, you should know what you're truly choosing. Over the next week, Evangeline learned what life among the lost ones really meant. It was harder than anything she'd known. Water had to be carried, food preserved and rationed, weapons maintained and practiced with, but it was also more honest than the polite society she'd left behind. Seren became her teacher in ways, both practical and profound. She learned to shoot accurately, to track game, to prepare medicines from desert plants. More importantly, she learned to see herself as something other than ornament or burden. White women are taught to be helpless, Esperanza observed one afternoon, as they worked together grinding corn. It makes them easier to control, but helplessness is a luxury we cannot afford here. I'm trying, Evangeline panted, her arms aching. From the unfamiliar work, you are succeeding. Yesterday, you could not hit the broad side of a canyon wall. Today, you put 3 shots in the center of the target. Speranza's smile was warm with approval. Nahali watches you with wonder, you know. Heat rose in Evangeline's cheeks. She'd been increasingly aware of Nahali's presence, of the way his eyes followed her movements, of the careful distance he maintained despite the obvious desire that sparked between them whenever they were alone. He's being honorable, she said quietly. He's being foolish, Esperanza corrected. You are both free adults who chose each other. What are you waiting for? Permission from society. Society cast. You both out, remember? That evening, Evangeline found Nahali sitting alone beside the stream, whittling something from a piece of white pine. She settled beside him without invitation, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his skin. What are you making? Flute? His knife moved with practiced precision, shaving delicate curls from the wood. My grandfather taught me. He said music was the language the heart spoke when words were not enough. Will you play for me when it's finished, if you wish? He set the wood aside, turned to face her in the starlight. Evangeline, there are things you need to know. About my past, about the price on my head. Tell me. His voice was steady, but she sensed the pain beneath as he spoke of his mixed heritage, of never fully belonging in either world, of the cavalry unit that had branded him a renegade for refusing to lead them to an Apache village, of the bounty hunters who'd pursued him across 3 territories, forcing him into a life of constant movement. I am not a good risk for a woman seeking stability, he finished quietly. Good thing I'm not seeking stability, she replied. I'm seeking truth. I'm seeking a man who sees me as more than a pretty ornament or a business transaction. You're so much more. His hand rose to touch her face, fingers tracing the line of her cheekbone with reverent gentleness. You are brave and strong and beautiful in ways that have nothing to do with your face. But the life I can offer, she silenced. Him with a kiss, pouring 5 years of longing into the contact. He went rigid with surprise, then gathered her against him with desperate hunger. As if he'd been starving and she was sustenance. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. The life you can offer, she whispered, is the only one I want. Around them, the canyon held its peace, water singing over stone, night birds calling from the cottonwoods. In the distance, she could hear soft laughter from the main camp. The sound of people who'd found their place in the world despite all odds. There are no ministers here, Nahali said softly. No churches, no legal ceremonies. There are witnesses. Evangeline replied, there are hearts that choose freely. Isn't that what marriage really is? His smile transformed his face, washing away years of loneliness and uncertainty. Among my people, a man and woman can pledge themselves before the community, speak their promises under open sky. Then that's what we'll do. She kissed him again, softer this time, sealing the promise. Tomorrow, if you're willing. I have been willing for 5 years, he murmured against her lips. Was just too afraid to believe you might be willing. 2. The ceremony took place at sunset, with the entire community gathered in a circle beside the stream. There were no formal vows, no predetermined words, just 2 people standing before friends and chosen family, speaking the truth of their hearts under a sky painted in shades of gold and crimson Evangeline had never felt. More beautiful than she did in the simple white dress Esperanza had sewn for her from traded cloth. Her hair woven with wildflowers, her feet bare on the soft grass. Nahali stood opposite her in traditional Apache clothing, pluckskin shirt and leggings, decorated with turquoise and silver. His long hair bound with leather and feathers. I take you as my heart, he said, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. I promise to stand with you against whatever storms may come, to hunt for you when you are hungry, to fight for you when you are threatened, to love you until the mountains crumble into dust. I take you as my soul, Evangeline replied, her voice strong despite the tears on her cheeks. I promise to stand with you wherever the path may lead, to be your strength when you are weary, your comfort when you are wounded, your companion, until the stars fall from the sky. James Morrison stepped forward, bearing a blanket woven in patterns of red and black. By the customs of the Apache, by the laws of the heart, you are joined. May your love be as enduring as stone, as flowing, as water, as bright as flame. He wrapped the blanket around both their shoulders, binding them together as the community erupted in cheers and celebration. Drums appeared from nowhere, voices rose in songs both ancient and immediate, and the canyon filled with joy that seemed to make the very rocks sing. Later, much later, they slipped away to the small cabin James had built for them higher up the canyon, a wedding gift. He'd said with a grin, though Evangeline suspected it had been planned long before their ceremony. Inside, candles flickered on rough-hewn surfaces, casting dancing shadows on walls decorated with Apache blankets and Mexican pottery. A fire crackled in the stone fireplace, warming the space to welcoming comfort. No regrets? Nahali asked, turning to face her in the golden light. Only one, Evangeline replied, moving closer until she could rest her hands against his chest. Feel the steady beating of his heart beneath her palms. His face tightened with concern. What? That it took us 5 years to get here? She smiled up at him, letting all her love show in her expression. That we wasted so much time being afraid. Relief transformed his features, followed quickly by desire that made her breath catch. Then, let us waste no more time, he murmured, his hands tangling in her hair as he drew her closer. Their wedding night was everything Evangeline had dreamed, and nothing like she'd expected. Gentle when she needed gentleness, passionate when she craved fire. Nahali loved her with a reverence that made her feel like something precious and wild. In his arms, she discovered parts of herself she'd never known existed. A woman who could demand as well as surrender, who could give pleasure as well as receive it. I love you, she whispered as they lay entwined afterward. Her head pillowed on his shoulder, their bodies slick with sweat and satisfaction. And I love you, he replied, his voice rough with emotion. More than honor, more than duty, more than life itself. Outside their window, the canyon settled into peaceful sleep, while inside, two hearts that had found their home in each other beat in perfect synchrony. But their happiness was not to remain undisturbed. 3 days into their marriage, James Morrison appeared at their door before dawn, his face grim with urgency. Riders approaching from the south, he said without preamble, a dozen men well armed, moving with purpose. They'll reach the outer markers within the hour. Nahali was already reaching for his weapons. Whitmore? His men certainly. Nether's eye recognized at least 2 federal marshals. James's voice carried deadly seriousness. They're not here for a social visit, Evangeline felt ice form in her stomach. They're here for me. For both of you, James corrected. The story they're telling is that you were kidnapped by a renegade Apache, that you're being held against your will. They have warrants, legal authority, and the truth, Nahali asked, checking his rifle with practiced efficiency. Won't matter. If they take you back to face Whitmore's justice, James met his eyes steadily. You know what has to happen? Evangeline looked between the 2 men, seeing understanding pass between them that excluded her. What? What has to happen? Nahali's face had gone hard as stone, all trace of the gentle lover replaced by the warrior who'd saved her twice. We run. The escape was a thing of desperate beauty, choreographed by people who understood that freedom sometimes required leaving everything behind. Within minutes of James's warning, the entire community had mobilized with the efficiency of long practice. This isn't the first time, Esperanza explained tersely as she pressed a pack of supplies into Evangeline's hands. We've planned for this day since the community began. Children and elders melted into hidden caves carved deep into the canyon walls. The most skilled fighters took positions among the rocks, ready to cover the retreat of those who needed to run. And at the center of it all, Nahali moved with calm determination, his love for her warring visibly with his protective instincts. "Should stay and fight," he said, for the third time as they prepared to leave. "And leave your wife a widow 3 days after your wedding?" Evangeline checked the pistol Esperanza had insisted she carry, surprised at how natural the weight felt in her hands. "I don't think so." "She's right," James said, appearing beside them with his own gear. "Your best chance is to lead them away. Let them chase you into country where you have the advantage. We'll hold them here, convince them you've already fled." "North, you could all be killed for helping us," Evangeline protested. "Child," Esperanza said gently, "we were all dead the moment we chose love over law. This is just another way of staying alive." She embraced Evangeline fiercely. "Take care of each other. And remember, home is not a place. It's the people who love you." The sound of approaching horses echoed off the canyon walls as Nahali led her through a hidden passage that opened onto a narrow ledge high above the valley floor. His horse waited there, along with a second mount, a mare, as black as midnight, with eyes like liquid fire. "She's yours," he said simply. "Esperanza trained her. Her name is Libertad Freedom." Evangeline swung into the saddle, feeling the mare's responsive power beneath her. In the distance, she could hear shouting as the posse discovered the canyon's entrance. Time was running out. They rode hard through secret paths only Nahali knew, following deer trails and water courses that wound deeper into the mountains. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew fainter, but never disappeared entirely. Judge Whitmore's men were determined, and they had the resources of federal law behind them. "Where are we going?" Evangeline called, as they paused to rest the horses. "Beside a hidden spring, north, into Apache territory proper." Nahali's face was set in lines of grim determination. "My mother's people may not fully accept a white wife, but they'll respect my right to protect what's mine. And they have no love for federal marshals. Will we be safe there?" His smile was sharp as a blade. "Safe is relative, but alive is better than the alternative." They rode through that day and into the night, stopping only when the horses needed rest. Evangeline had never pushed her body so hard, but she refused to complain, refused to be the weakness that brought them down. The skills Esperanza had taught her proved their worth. She could read the trail signs Nahali pointed out, could move quietly when stealth was needed, could shoot accurately when a rabbit darted across their path. "You are magnificent," Nahali said that second night as they sheltered in a cave hidden behind a waterfall. "I've never seen anyone adapt so quickly to this life." "I had good teachers," Evangeline replied, settling against him in their shared bedroll, "and good motivation." "What motivation?" "I refuse to lose you now that I've found you. Not to Judge Whitmore, not to federal marshals, not to anything." She turned in his arms, fierce with determination. "We're going to make this work. Nahali, we're going to build a life together no matter what it takes." His kiss was answer enough. On the third day, they reached Apache territory, a landscape so wild and beautiful it took Evangeline's breath away. Red mesas rose like monuments to ancient gods, while hidden valleys cradled springs and meadows where wild horses ran free, and everywhere the sense of watching eyes, of a people who knew every rock and tree. "They've been tracking us since dawn," Nahali said calmly, as they rode through a narrow pass between towering cliffs. "Your people?" "Yes. They're deciding whether I'm still welcome, whether you're a threat, or simply foolish." His mouth quirked in something that might have been amusement. "The jury is still out on both questions." The decision came in the form of a woman who appeared on the trail ahead, as if materialized from stone itself. Gray-streaked hair braided with silver, her face bearing the same strong bones as Nahali's. "My son," she said in English accented with Apache rhythms, "you return to us at last, and you bring the woman who has haunted your dreams." "Mother." Nahali dismounted, went to her with obvious joy and relief. "This is Evangeline, my wife. Evangeline, this is Ayana, my mother, medicine woman of the Chiricahua." Ayana studied Evangeline with dark eyes that seemed to see everything. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "So, the white dove has found her wings and chosen to fly with the hawk?" She gestured toward a hidden trail that led up into the mesas. Come, your grandfather waits, and there are things you both must hear. As they followed Ayanna into the heart of Apache territory, Evangeline realized their journey was far from over. But for the first time since fleeing the canyon, she felt hope. They had found sanctuary with people who understood that love could bridge any divide, that family was more than blood, that freedom was worth any price. Behind them, the outside world with its laws and prejudices seemed as distant as a half-remembered dream. Ahead lay the unknown, but they would face it together, the Apache warrior and his white wife. The woman who had chosen love over safety, the man who had chosen heart over solitude. The future stretched before them like the vast desert sky, full of challenges, but also possibilities. It's beautiful and wild and entirely their own. As the sun set behind the mesas, painting the world in shades of gold and crimson, Evangeline knew with absolute certainty that she had never been happier. She was home at last, not in a place, but in the arms of the man who had saved her in every way that mattered, who had shown her that sometimes the greatest courage was simply choosing to love without conditions,